Hey there, Goblins. Welcome to another episode of Goblin Salvage Rites. My name's Robert.
I'm Eric.
And today we've got a very interesting topic. We're going to be spending attention like currency, or at least teaching you how to do it. Isn't that right, Eric?
That's right. I mean, if Elon Musk has taught me anything in this day and age, it's that attention is a commodity.
Oh, enchanté.
And goblins are all about that shiny commodity.
Exactly. But before we jump into the topic, first we have to thank a new goblin patron.
Warrior patron.
Martin van Boel.
Martin!
Danke.
Hi.
I don't actually know what country this is from, but that's not appropriate. Wiedersehen. We got some German beer.
German beer.
Cheers. Von
Salud.
Stefiner. Vitus.
As they say, and wherever they say that.
Prost. I don't know. I don't speak German.
Skald.
So yeah, thank you so much for joining the Patreon. This past month and for the next couple months, we're going to be working on our first ever adventure.
Yep.
Delivering some pretty interesting upgrades to what we think adventure should be offering. So if you want to find out more, go check out the Patreon.
Be like Martin.
Yeah, be like Martin.
He's a good goblin.
Absolutely.
Nice goblin.
So before we jump into the topic, Eric, why don't we talk about what we played?
What we played, because everybody loves this part.
What did we
Fast
play?
forward.
What we got stamps in the bottom. You can jump around if you want.
Right.
Yeah,
In
we got
the
chapters.
didgeridoo, right?
We got chapters.
No. So what did we play? Surprise, surprise, Edgewatch. We are in the lower temple of the Norgorber Temple.
Ooh.
This is the one place in the Inner Sea where you can openly practice your Norgorberite faith and not get hounded by the law. And the idea is there is a temple, and that's it. There is no lower temple. No lower temple exists.
No lower temple, no.
You can ask about it, but nobody knows about it because it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So the players are in the lower temple right now. And it was just it was a really, 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 really fun experience where the party got massively split because Ajax, the rogue, he refused to go to the black altar that sucked the champion and the sorcerer into somewhere he couldn't see. So he just fucked off to the rest of the temple and he joined the rest of the poisoning show that's going on right now. Sort of like a convention for poisons and medical advancements and shit like that. So I had to run a split party scenario where like the big, beefy, severe encounters, they're all downstairs.
Unexpectedly.
I have two fucking party members together. Granted, one of them's a champion and he can probably take on half of the dungeon himself.
Right.
But it was crazy because it went from being a balanced, mathed out series of encounters with 3 players to becoming a much more social game where all the diplomacy and intimidation and stuff like that was being leveraged by the only 2 people who were there to get certain bad guys to fight other bad guys.
Oh.
Yeah, so like every room had a Norgorberite priest.
Right.
And then there were 4 mooks, and they were like poison eaters. They eat poisons, and then they roid out rage like Bane and Batman, and they start, bubbling through the mouth and then just wailing on things. So they would enter a room, and they'd look around, and everybody in the room would be looking like, who the fuck are you? You can't be back here. This is restricted area. So they would show up, and immediately one of the players would be like, word is there's an imposter, and he's down here. He's the imposter. Motherfucker rolled a critical success, a natural 20.
Oh, shit.
I couldn't just shit on that, right? I had to do something with it.
Absolutely.
So it was kind of a bit of a Three Stooges play where all 4 of the poison eaters started wailing on the Norgorberite priest after the priest flung some 5th level spells that didn't really land because I rolled shit. And so these 4, bruisers are like circling around the Norgorberite on the floor. Dude's trying to cover his head like that, and they're just doing the mafia kicking in a circle as they go around him. They did that in 2 separate rooms because they rolled really fucking well. And I'm like, this is turning into a clown show. But it was after being in that moment for a couple of rooms and letting it sink in, it was hilarious. It was funny.
Yeah.
And it was not what I expected. Certainly isn't what I wanted. But after we got through a few of those scenes, it's exactly what was supposed to happen.
Absolutely.
It was just fucking brilliant.
Absolutely.
And yeah, my players they just knocked it out of the park, given the limited resources they had.
The deceivers
Yeah.
into fighting themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it
I
shouldn't
mean,
have happened, but it did.
How much more ironic and apropos can you get?
Yeah, I mean, a critical success is a crit success. You know,
Absolutely.
you got to give them something. So that was Edgewatch in a nutshell. We're getting ready to go for the BBEG, hopefully next session,
That's sick.
and a very large bad guy will be forthcoming, who will have his own miniature.
Oh shit! All right, Eric.
I might even paint it. I don't know.
Oh, we can do a paint night.
Yeah,
Paint
I haven't
night.
done that
Come
in
over.
forever.
Let's do paint night.
So,
yeah, nice.
Yeah, that was that. What have we done in the world of Bloodlords?
Bloodlords. So currently our party is hunting a evil hag in a land of evil people. They are responsible for creating a poison that had poisoned like the living people of the town that we are a part of, even though I think the adventure assumes that you're living, but we're all undead. So we're kind of just like, can't hurt the
Bloodlords
food.
assumes that you're quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I did not know this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be utterly terrifying.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the whole conceit, I think, of the adventure. So to like flip it on its head and all be undead is kind of just like we run into a lot of moments where we're like, why do we care?
You're going to turn into undead eventually, though, right?
What do you mean?
That just seems like a massively missed opportunity.
I hope so. I think that's
a
kind of the point.
6-volume undead game.
I think that's kind of the point of you to eventually become
and then you
undead
choose which
and
one you
stuff
want to
like-
go
Right,
with.
right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, you're already undead, though, aren't you?
We all started undead because it was more fun that way.
Right, right.
You know, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
So we got a skeleton, a vampire, a mummy, a bog mummy. We have another skeleton, and then we have a bones oracle who is like in between Pharasma and the undead. And like Pharasma and the undead are kind of like fighting for control over his soul, basically.
Nice.
So they took the ancestry to be like the Pharasman chosen revived.
Interesting.
But then went Bones Oracle.
Okay.
So that they get healed by undead. So that's kind of like a pull and push.
Oh, that's
between
fascinating.
Pharasma.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're having a great time. We're hunting down this hag in the evil woods next to the town.
Right.
We got to meet this really interesting creature I've never even learned. I don't even remember the name, but it's basically like a I think it was described as cousins to the to trolls.
Okay.
But it had like an animal tail, like a furry tail, but it was like a normal human woman with apples, red apples.
Right.
And
not suspicious at all.
And exactly. Here's okay. Hear me out. The designers put this in there as like a big MacGuffin, being like, "Oh, it's clearly a hag. They're offering you apples. They're trying to trick you."
Okay.
But it wasn't. It was actually like a helpful spirit of the forest that like gave us. We answered their riddles. And we played along, and we also passed the. So Eric,
wasn't one of these assholes in Kingmaker? Like there was a witch on the shore of the giant lake, and we thought that was just bad news walking into that little.
That was
little
different.
house.
That was okay. That was in Kingmaker. All right, spoilers if you're playing Kingmaker. Don't fucking listen to this. She's literally just an alchemist that was played up to be the witch, but in reality, she's just like, guys, I'm
We had our
chill.
brown pants ready for that scene.
Exactly. So that character's actually just chill.
Yeah. And for the record, in a Geb campaign, you're using phrases like, the evil fucking hag, and, the evil woods. Isn't it just the woods and the hag, or maybe even a citizen of Geb?
It is actually. It absolutely is. But that's the thing with Geb. Everyone's evil, so it's really like who's breaking the law and who's not breaking the law.
Right.
It's a law.
It's more about ethics and morality.
It's more about law and breaking and bending.
That's interesting stuff for me.
But anyway, so we were trying to find this hag lady. We ran into her. We answered her riddles 3, which was a lot of fun. I was like on my way back from a show, like a convention that we were just working. So I was literally in the car in the passenger seat with my phone in Discord watching someone else's picture-in-picture on my phone trying to play the game along, which was a lot of... It was
Not
crazy.
only were you texting and driving, but
I wasn't driving. I was passenger seat.
Oh, you're a passenger.
I was
Okay,
passenger.
that's different.
Yeah.
You get a pass.
Yeah, I get a passenger. Anyway, so we did the... we answered her riddles 3. We passed like a diplomacy check with her 2. She like... Turns out... Before we even started interacting with her, someone like did really well on their knowledge check. So they knew what she was, which was really helpful for us because if not, we would have tried to murder her and had a really bad time.
Sure.
So instead of doing that, she gives us, it turns out she like hates the hag we're hunting. And she gives us like this book, this hag hunting spell book that it's like a grimory that like gives you bonuses and stuff. It's like a 9th level item. We're like level 4, so this is like, oh fuck.
Right.
If we sell this, it's like 900 gold. So
God damn it.
Yeah, it's like 900 gold. So we have this really cool like social interaction with her. She gives us a boon, like a fortune effect that we can use once in the next 24 hours, which is awesome. And then we go through the woods. We fight some evil trees. They're literally just,
or as we call them in Geb, trees.
They're just undead trees, and we fight them.
They're tax-paying citizens.
We fight some tax-paying citizens. And then we find like an obelisk thing with some more very smart undead creatures who are like guardian undead. And before we could even try to talk to them, they just like attack us because we're attacking their whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So we end the fight halfway through. One of our dudes is almost dead because these intelligent undead are like, fuck this spellcaster who keeps casting at us from far away.
Right.
One of them just runs over to him and clocks him, almost kills him immediately. And we're like, oh. My exemplar is finally popping off. Like every turn I use one of my imminence abilities or whatever. I go Super Saiyan and I, change my icons and stuff. I basically make one person dazzled. No save, just you're dazzled for the next round, which is pretty powerful. And then I'm taking all these hits and I'm attacking back and I'm healing. And then I switch into my other form, my other icon, and then I heal myself again. And I'm back at full HP and I'm like, come on, fucking hit me, bitches. So the healing tank is actually working pretty well. It feels really good. Yeah, it feels really good. So we're having a good time. Doing combat. I really like finally getting used to VTTs. Yeah. And stuff like that. Even though I was on my phone the whole time, like, I obviously just know how to run my character. So I was just like, yeah, I move, I do this, and I do this, and I do this. And people are just like, okay, can you roll dice for me? Yeah, Robert, you hit. Sick. I deal a lot of damage. Nice. Yeah. So it was cool.
That's rad.
Yeah.
So I did a VTT thing one time before, and it was actually really cool. It took a lot of getting used to for me. Yeah. But I was able to like set my hookah up here and have all my ambient lighting around me and just sort of like make a mood out of it.
Dude, and, I'm cooking on this VTT IRL thing. I'm looking more and more into it.
I'm looking forward to it.
I want to make it really happen. I've got your projector now.
Perfect.
I'm going to try and figure out a way to make it work.
Think you can get this done before winter when it gets cold and we all want to be inside gaming?
Honestly, like we have 2 or 3 more sessions of Delta Green and then with Jacques on Thursdays and then Austin's probably going to run a 3-shot. Yeah. In the
Warhammer Fantasy.
Is
he doing Age of Sigmar or is it a different?
Yeah, it's Age of Sigmar. Okay. It's like at the Age of Sigmar TTRPG. So we're going to give that a shot. So that's going to probably be like 3 or 4 months, maybe 2 or 3 months. Wow. And
that's a lot of lead up to whatever you're going to end up doing.
And then we're going to probably, I think I'm kind of sold on doing
Pray for Death?
Pray for Death.
Really? Okay.
Because I
thought you were going to jettison that one.
Well, I bought the
Foundry pack.
Not yet, but I bought the Humble Bundle for the Eastern.
Oh yeah,
that like $45 Humble Bundle they give you in a book. So I'm getting Player Core 1, and in the mail.
Surprisingly enough,
I never, and I'm getting the sketch cover, so I have 2 matching sketch covers, which is rad.
Timing, man.
I fucking love the sketch cover. I'm so glad they moved away from the premium cover. I mean, they're still premium covers, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
No one buys
Get the sketch.
No one buys a premium any days. So yeah, I'm gonna have both sketch covers, and I bought I was really hoping it would come with a VTT pack for Fist of the Ruby Phoenix because I know you really wanted to play that, and I was like, Pray for Death is cool, but if I could get my hands on Fist of the Ruby Phoenix and run that for the guys, that'd be really sick. But it
that
turns
might move
out
the needle, huh?
They never made a Foundry pack for it. So Fist of the Ruby Phoenix came out before Paizo was publishing Foundry packs for their adventure paths.
And they never went back and redid it?
So the way it works is if an adventure gets remastered, like you know how they like combine all the adventures together in one book and they remaster it, it gets a Foundry pack.
Got it. Okay, they did that for Ruby Phoenix, but it wasn't remastered. It was pre-mastered.
It was pre-mastered.
They put it into the hardbound book.
Exactly. And because of that, everyone online thinks we're probably never getting it. So I would have to make the VTT from scratch and build it all out myself, which is not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
No.
I want to buy the VTT. I want to buy it. So I'm probably going to end up buying it. It's like $45, $50. It's the same cost as the book.
Right.
And I'll load it into Foundry and I'll start poking around on it and stuff like that. I'm
Cool.
pretty stoked for it. It looks pretty
Looking
cool.
forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we are 3 hours into the video, what is it we're talking about?
Players we all have our own attention spans. And it's hard to understand how much of our attention gets used up at each scene.
It's ridiculous how varied it is from person to person.
So what Eric has put together in his infinite DM wisdom is, 50 years of DMing? 60 years? Is it 60 years?
I think I'm going on 83 at this point.
83 years of DMing. Is he's kind of tried to create a currency system that's easy to understand, like a framework for understanding spending the attention span of your players.
Yeah.
In a way that can allow you, goblins at home, to pay for things in attention currency. I guess is the best way to put it.
I don't know about the best way, but I'm going to give this a crack because I like what you said, and I'll go ahead and take the credit. I just basically, we had played over many, many, many years together with tables that are kind of split between neurotypical and neurodivergent.
Oh, hell yeah.
And there's just a wide range of ADD, ADHD, divergence, typical, and then combinations. Everybody has a certain amount of spoons, to use spoon theory, that they bring to an experience. And the rate at which they expend them varies from player to player, from task to task. So just to put it simply, imagine you have 10 units you can spend at a single session. If we run a combat, it might cost you one of those 10 units worth of energy. And you're there, you're on, you're involved, you're present, you're not bored, you're not checking your phone. For me, sure, one unit, great. And then the second combat kicks in. It might still only cost you one. You've just spent 2 out of your 10. That second combat is probably going to cost me maybe 2. So now I'm 3 into my 10. All right, well, what if we throw a third combat in there? You probably used up most of the rest of my
diminishing returns to scale here.
For this player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if instead of combat, it was like RP situations and like planning and political skullduggery, that sort of thing, it would be flipped.
Absolutely.
And you would be like, I don't know if I can do 5 hours of this. I'm good for a scene, you guys, but scroll. So every player is different. I can totally see players out that are like, I dig the exploration thing, but I have a little bit of a hard time focusing on other things. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen a player like that, but it stands to reason that person is represented somewhere. So at the end of the day, this is all about treating your players and GMs attention as though it is a currency, a limited currency. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a budget. We're going to call this a drama budget for the next hour. And how do you account for it? How do you catalog it? How do you spend it? How can you carefully treat everybody's attention, all 6 people around the table, for a 5-hour span where everybody gets their needs met? And that's an idea I've been flirting with for a while now. So what I've come up with is 10 sort of sample question situations to go through. We're going to go through 5 of them right now. And then the other 5, we're just going to throw on the YouTube, the Discord, and y'all can come on down to the Discord and chat about it and find out what the other 5 questions are.
Yeah. Yeah, so, we're going to put a link to we're creating new chats in our Discord specific to each episode that comes out.
Yep.
Where you can come in and speak specific and talk specifically about that episode. Yeah. And that's where we're going to post extra tidbits and extra stuff that we end up making in the podcast that doesn't make it into the podcast because, we're trying to keep this to like an hour. Yeah,
and I'm a lazy motherfucker who doesn't check the YouTube comments as often as I used to.
Oh, any one of you that I respond to, it's on the toilet.
Yeah.
I'm responding to you on the toilet. I'm just letting you know.
I want you to keep that visual as you're scrolling.
Robert's just pooping. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just like
scrolling like a toilet paper roll.
LOL with like the rock on and the glasses emoji.
That's all Robert.
Yeah, that's all me.
But yeah, you know, I just I think this is a worthy topic, and I've never really tried to put language to it. So this is going to be my awkward subway groping first attempt at it.
I love it.
Let's do it. Dun dun dun. So what I'm going to do, El Roberto, that's Robert in Spanish, is kind of just walk you through by leading you by the nose. And then I want to kind of get your reaction to some ideas that I'm going to throw you away. So let's put my little gobbo glasses on. The drama budget, how to spend your table's attention like currency. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to treat your player's focus like a finite resource and learn when to cash it in for emotional impact, tension, or character development, and when to save it. So, Robert, I'm going to ask you here, which encounter building choices, for example, elite adjustments, terrain complexity, narrative stakes, which encounter choices do you consider high cost in terms of your attention at the table? Which of those suck more of your energy units out, and which ones are less? Again, elite adjustments, varying the monster's complexity.
As a player or as a DM?
Either way.
Okay.
Let's start as a player because I imagine most of the players are kind of interested in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you probably self-identify as a player far much more than a GM.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like 80%. I've been 80% player my whole life. Only recently have I been like DMing way more than I'm playing, which is super foreign to me.
I'm way more interested in your player answer, but I still want to hear your GM answer.
So from a player answer, combat is really easy for me. It's the part of the game that I really love and I really obsess over. So you put a bunch of cool obstacles in front of me between me and the opponent.
Like physical bits on the table.
Love it. Love that shit. If I have 10 units and I sit down at the table, that's costing me 1, like you talked about before.
What if there's a Z-axis to that particular battle?
And
we're counting squares.
So me specifically, actually super easy.
Okay.
It's still a 1, but that's because I played a huge portion of my life in Headspace. So
Like Theater of the Mind?
Yeah, Theater of the Mind. So like from the ages of 10 to like 14, 15, I played in the traditional way with my big grognard group every Sunday. And then my Sundays kind of, I kind of like faded away from that group and I moved to a new group of different people. And that group was led by one of my favorite DMs of all time, Ray. And Ray ran his whole game in Theater of the Mind. So we would constantly negotiate about how far away is that? About blah, 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 blah. How many people could I get in a 30-foot fireball? He'd be like, well, it's about this many. And after doing that for years, I like the Z-axis is super easy for me to understand.
Yeah, I feel that when people are approaching the table in good faith and they're not trying to nickel and dime every square, it's easier to have a Theater of the Mind experience.
You just got to trust your DM.
Yeah, and trust your players too.
Exactly. And also, for a long time, part of the fun was min-maxing my fireball to get as many people in it as possible. Now, I care a lot less about min-maxing my fireball. It's still fun, but like, if the DM's like, yeah, you get 2 out of 3 dudes in your fireball, I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. So the Z-axis doesn't really kill me. I love having obstacles. Elite adjustments aren't a big deal for a player or as a DM because of how wonderful technology is. You just go into Archives and Ethies and hit elite and you're good to go. As far as the last one you said, which was the
narrative stakes.
Narrative stakes is a lot harder for me. Like the implications of what a fight means. Like for instance, last night or like 1 or 2 nights ago when I was playing Bloodlords, both of my fights had 0 implications.
Sure.
They're
like one and done experiences.
Yeah, they're just random trees you fight on your way to. They're road bump on your way to
empty
your goal.
calorie encounters.
Yeah. Or maybe they did a little bit of world building.
Okay.
That
has value.
Yeah, absolutely. But they weren't really like substantive. The fight before that, we fought 2 red caps that were trying to collect heads for their master, who is the hag we're trying to capture. So it had a lot of story baked into it because afterwards we interrogated one of them. We actually started the game last time interrogating this red cap, getting information about their mistress, and then summarily executing them.
Like you do.
Yeah, like you do. Because we're evil and we're undead.
It's D&D.
So I'd say that stuff probably uses 2 spoons.
Okay.
Instead of 1.
Is there a combat scenario where you as a player feel like, okay, even I would have trouble doing 2 or 3 of these in a 5-hour session? What would that combat look like?
Oh, wow. What a great question. That would have to be,
like you'd be emotionally drained.
Do you remember that epic theater combat we did in Edgewatch where there was like a giant demon attacking.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
everyone
yeah.
was pretending to be.
Mhm.
You put so
The reenactment.
Yeah. So one of the things that really weighs me down is when the DM adds subsystems to the combat that aren't in the rule book.
Yep.
That is a huge spender for me. So if you're like, okay, this stuff is going on and these obstacles are people and interactions that don't have a subsystem that you've already explained beforehand. It's just kind of like you and I are kind of
Just
like
slow rolling it out there.
we're negotiating how this works as it happens. That very quickly begins to eat into my attention budget where I'm just like,
yeah, and that's exactly what we're talking about here.
exactly. So I'm like, okay, so you mean I get to make attacks against their psyche or, or whatever it is. It's like the further away from the rules as written we get, especially when it comes to combats, the more the more spoons it's going to take for me.
See, I'm the exact opposite way, and two other people at that same table were just sort of like rolling with it, and it wasn't as taxing as it was for you.
Exactly.
So that's an important, that's a big reason why I wanted to have this discussion in the first place, because, I want you to be able to endure 5 hours of my game, and I can't force you
5 hours of your game.
And if I do everything my way, the way that I feel it should be done, whatever the fuck that means, then I would be missing the point.
Thanks, Sinatra.
So that's right.
I hope you Zoomers get that reference.
Yeah, everybody should. That's part of American history. So again, to bring it back to the question, which encounter building choices, for example, elite adjustments, terrain complexity, narrative stakes, do you consider high cost in terms of attention? And how do you space them out to avoid cognitive fatigue? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do with this topic. How do we avoid cognitive fatigue for you, player Robert, or even player Eric for GM Robert? How do we avoid fatigue for each other? It requires session 0, session 0.5. It requires communication. It requires acknowledging that not everybody expends emotional energy and cognitive energy at the same rate.
And this is such a foreign concept that to most people, just like generally, that it's something you could try to get to the bottom of in session 0, but realistically, you're going to have to learn it over multiple sessions of trial
I feel
and
this
error.
is a mid-campaign check-in kind of a thing.
I mean,
I think about it.
The way I look at it is maybe you have this conversation before a campaign starts, especially with a new person, but you got to just let it, you got to see what people's reactions are as you play. And maybe
I like
take
the idea
notes.
of just like floating it, in the beginning. Hey guys, eventually we're going to dial this in, but I just want you to keep this in your mind. Too much combat, too much role play. Which ones create cognitive fatigue?
Yeah.
Which ones don't? And there's no wrong answer here. Just like over the next 4, 5, 6 sessions, keep an eye on that.
And it's interesting you bring up that spectrum of combat versus role play. My gut tells me that there is a third axis that creates a 3-dimensional spectrum. That I don't really know what that third thing is yet.
It's downtime. It's exploration.
You think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's when you're not in combat and you're not doing role play. You're engaged in looking at a hex map, planning your bank heist. It's that third space. I tried to look for a fourth and I didn't find it. So downtime, exploration mode, and whatever the fuck else I just said.
That's the
planning
Z-axis.
That seems to be the third part of that Venn diagram, at least for me. If anybody has any other ideas, I'd love to hear it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and finish this item number 1. I gave 3 examples, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, hell yeah, I love this idea. 1 being hard pass.
Yeah.
Just give me your brief knee-jerk reaction.
Easy.
Use terrain complexity as a narrative highlight, not a constant. Action item. This is a strategy for you folks to try at home and tell me how it works. Design 1 out of every 3 to 4 combat encounters with complex terrain or verticality. Use simple maps in between. So 1 complex combat, like a set piece kind of combat, and the other 2, 3, or 4, keep it simple, stupid. Allow people to sort of like decompress from the chunky big one. 1 to 10, knee-jerk reaction.
Oh, 10. Love
Robert
it.
is a player.
I'm here for it every day of the week.
Okay.
Give me a bunch of complicated maps. I fucking love it. I love it. Adds depth.
This
to
is one
combat.
complicated map and 4 simple maps.
Oh, I'm pretty mid on that. I want more complicated maps.
Yeah.
So give me. I'll give you like a 6.
Okay, perfect.
I'm happy I'm getting a complicated map.
Sure.
And if you have more, like if you want to hear more about that specifically, the complicated map idea, I'll link in the doobly-doo, and I'll try and put a card up. We did an episode pretty recently on combats and how to make them more interesting, where we talked a lot about adding complexity to combat.
Yeah, a ton of trial and error went into that one.
Yeah.
So the goal of this entire number 1 of 5 is to let tactical complexity shine without burning attention in every single encounter. Every encounter in a 5-hour session can't be the end of the world encounter. You only get one of those in a session. Build around it. One complex encounter, and then a bunch of simpler ones for people to kind of like power down from before they hit the boss fight or whatever. So that's what that was. Pace narrative stakes across the encounter tiers, scale of 1 to 10. Here's the action item. Alternate high stakes. For example, defending an NPC, stopping a ritual before it triggers. Alternate high stakes with medium or low stakes. Battles, like a random ambush or a monster lair. You know, like these kind of empty calorie tree fights we were just talking about.
Right.
They do world building, but not much more than that. So alternating the high stakes with medium or low stakes, the goal being to avoid emotional fatigue by spacing out encounters where failure feels critical.
Oh, yeah. So that's
a tough one for me.
I really, really like that idea, because if everything feels critical, then nothing feels critical. And that's really, for me, I'm pretty sensitive to that. So it's probably like an 8 or a 9.
See, for me, that's where I eat in combat because I like my mind movie.
Yeah.
You know, I like the dangerous world, and I like my character to sort of like treat everything as though it is a threat, because everything is a threat. But this is also a game. And there's a place for just those steamrolling encounters where like you're not in any threat, trouble, anything like that. So quit acting like it.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm torn.
We actually have a saying that we would love to turn into a shirt in our Bloodlords campaign, and the saying is this a trivial encounter? Because the same character who's like living between two worlds
I love that so much.
Our Oracle took the archetype called the Wild Mage archetype, or the Wild Magic archetype.
Sure.
So the rules specifically say, if this is more than a trivial encounter, you have to roll a die at the beginning of combat. And we always kept forgetting. So every time a combat starts now,
this is a trivial
we're always like, is this a trivial encounter?
Hold up a sign.
Literally. But we're playing online. So that's perfect for me. And
Nice.
and honestly, like I'll probably give you like a 9 or an 8. Like I want some empty calories. I want some healthy empty calories.
Yep.
And a little bit of world building here or there. Fun little romp against some dudes. Maybe they're hard to kill, but the important part here is not the difficulty.
Not being emotionally attached to the scene.
The difference is it's not the difficulty of the fight. You can throw a severe counter at me, no problem. Severe trees, randomly trees that slap, no problem. It's the rammies, bro. The
It's always
ramifications.
about the rammies.
So if the ramifications of every fight are like, if I do this, the world ends, that just weighs on me super high.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah,
exactly.
See, I love that kind of shit, but I also recognize as taxing for other people.
Yeah.
Because, roleplay junkie.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's solid for number 2. We got 3 more. Let's start buzzing through. When designing a session arc, how do you decide where to spend the most dramatic tension during combat, exploration, or roleplay? And what signs tell you that it's time to play out? Let's see here. Did I do that right?
Yes, you did. You do everything right.
King.
Slay King. I'm learning the slang of the children.
Is that what the children say?
That's what the kids are saying. Yep. I got a little boo-boo recently, which is
got a boo-boo.
Yeah. So I run a toy store. Well, Eric is searching on his phone. Little side chat. I run a toy store with one of my best friends, Cayman. And we go to like anime conventions and stuff like that. And we do like reselling, and we basically buy lots on Facebook at Marketplace and sometimes online. on like eBay and stuff like that. And we resell stuff. Well, we recently bought a kit of Labubus, which are like these cute little stuffies that are like really fucking super popular. And they have all these like legitimate like UV feet symbols to check if they're legitimate and all this shit. So anyway, we ended up accidentally buying a box of like illegitimate Labubus, and some 9-year-old schooled us on on their legitimacy and explained to us how this was like a total fake.
That's fabulous.
So we
go kid.
Yeah, I know she was
You're
awesome.
Gonna go far,
I
kid.
Literally told her, when you get old enough, you need to work in the intelligence business.
Or come to me for a job.
Yeah, because this is badass. So I took back the little stuffy Labubus, and they have like hard rubber faces, and then soft stuffy bodies, and then like little feet that are plastic.
Yeah.
And
that's gonna be me in 20 years.
Or is it already?
Shut up.
So I took them back, and when I was kind of smushing one of them, its eye popped out, which I thought was amazing.
You chose violence that day.
So I grabbed a Sharpie. One of my friends was over. Her and I were like, dude, it'd be so funny if we started giving this Labubu face tattoos, like the grungiest motherfucker possible. So we spent the entire night laughing and looking up ridiculous face tattoos. And now we both have like matching Labubus with like junked up face tattoos. I'll put a picture of it in the Discord for everyone to see. It's fucking hilarious.
That's pretty awesome.
And I wear it on my bag now. So I'm like a grown ass 32-year-old man with a cute ass Labubu that has a dick drawn on its foot. And I cannot wait. I'm waiting for the day where I'm like at Costco and some like little kid runs up to me and is like, "Do you have a Labubu?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, check it out." And he's just got like fucking face tattoos and a missing eye and an eye patch. And the kid's just going to be like, "Mommy,
Did I ever tell you that Dickfoot was the name of my high school ska band?
What?
Yeah.
You had a high school ska band?
This is all true.
In what world?
In no world whatsoever.
Rabbit trail over.
When designing a session arc, how do you decide where to spend the most dramatic tension? During combat, exploration, or roleplay? And what signs tell you that it's time to pay out? This is probably GM Robert's brain I'm about to pick here.
Okay.
The idea being identify the session's emotional theme or narrative question. Here is the call to action. Start your prep by answering what is at stake emotionally or morally in this particular session. For example, is today's session about loyalty versus duty, survival versus sacrifice? The goal here is letting the theme that you're trying to express as a GM, even as a player as well, but mostly as a GM, guide where your tension should peak. Do you want your emotional tension to peak through combat? Combat is a wonderful way to express external conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want your emotional thing to peak during exploration? Exploration is an amazing vehicle for the sense of discovery, that kind of like, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. And you get it from like a hex crawl, looking at a hex map, or you uncover a thing in another place. Nobody's got a knife to your throat, and there's no like political role play going on.
Okay.
So the emotional peak is literally the Lewis and Clark expeditionary act of discovering. Or your emotional peak being, what was the other one? Roleplay, my territory. Roleplay is always, in my opinion, the best way to express internal and emotional conflict. Can you do internal emotional conflict through combat? Yes, you can. Through exploration? Yes, you can. But the idea of combat being external conflict, exploration being discovery, roleplay being internal emotional conflict, one of those is going to be your emotional peak during a given session. And I've watched you do all three of those throughout Kingmaker. I don't know if you intended to.
Nope.
But then you just have a natural tendency to do it.
Just going on vibes.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Because this is Western storytelling tradition. None of this is original.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've been playing long enough to where I'm probably just like intrinsically imitating what I think is appropriate.
Sure. So here's my question I want to ask you. Answer as a player or a GM or both. Do you feel more satisfied when the emotional peak of a session occurs in combat and exploration or in role play?
In a
or
combination,
do you ratio it?
Actually for me, it's a combination of fight then role play.
Okay.
It's
in that order usually?
Yes.
Okay.
It's we have a external conflict that is then butt ended by an emotional resolution.
Sure.
or an emotional conflict that has been resolved.
Yeah, the catharsis through the end of combat.
Exactly. So I guess to say combat, but a combat doesn't really deliver unless you have that end of fight scene anime moment where you're like, I regret everything. You were right. Or the damn it, Bobby, you got me this time kind of talk at the end.
Right.
That really wraps it up in a bow and lets me drink my medicine.
What about during combat? The role play during combat.
That's hard for me.
I'm thinking specifically of the death of Dragrid.
I'm thinking every combat you've ever run with a boss fight. Motherfucker. Every one of his boss fights is like in game, like in real life, 12 seconds of fighting and then 4 minutes of back and forth monologue where we're both like arguing and then back to fighting. And IRL, that's like 4 seconds, but like, or 12 seconds.
The melodrama is strong.
But like for me, because I've been in this system for so long and because a round is 6 seconds.
Right.
Man, it's just it's the grognard programming.
Sure.
Is what I'm going to call it. But it's really hard when you not juxtapose, but when you put that, when you sprinkle that role play in between combat, it's just like,
it's disjointing for you.
Yeah. It's there, you're going fast and you're going slow. You're going fast and you're going slow. And I'd rather just be like combat epic moment. We have a bunch of cool dice rolls. We're all like throwing one-liners at each other at the end of our movements, or at the end of our actions, sure. But like one sentence, not like paragraphs. And at the end, they're like on death's door or whatever, or you just stabbed them and then they throw a monologue at you because we're all like, okay, combat's over.
Right.
To me, that's a lot less taxing.
Yeah, I eat the way you game. So when I have a plate of food with like broccoli, mashed potatoes, and chicken and rice or something.
American. Okay, besides the rice,
I will go through all of the broccoli first,
right,
and then I will move on to the mashed potatoes, and then I will move on to the rice, and then I will move on to the meat because I want the meat to linger. Right, that's the taste I want to stick with me. So that's I eat in portions, clean portions.
That's
like
hilarious.
That's how you like your combat.
I eat like a psychopath where I throw it all into a bowl and I just mash it up together.
Exactly right. See, that is how I like my combat.
Oh,
so it's just this kind of shit is just fascinating to me.
Interesting.
So again, just to dial it back to or to bring it back to the idea of where do you want as a GM or as a player your session's emotional theme or narrative question to be? Do you want that to peak during combat?
Yeah.
It's gonna be structured a certain way. If you want it to peak during exploration mode, it's got to be structured a certain way. If you want it to peak through intense role-playing moments, it's got to be structured a certain way. And so there's an intentionality
to tie this back to the topic specifically. Like when you make this decision, you have to keep in mind like this is going to spend 2 out of 5 of your players'
attention units.
A lot more than others.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
So, like,
and that's where I totally missed the boat in Edgewatch is I overestimate the endurance that players have for my long-winded scenes sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's, every GM's got a problem like that. That one happens to be one of mine. I just get so excited about like creating new and interesting ways of doing things that I forget that they all have an attention cost.
Well, the optimal, like in a utilitarian world where we don't have emotions necessarily. That's a bad way to put it, but in a utilitarian world,
I can be without emotions.
Well, this actually requires I said that and I immediately was like, well, actually, this is deeply emotional.
Roll it back.
Yeah, but in a utilitarian world, you would only play with other people who want the same kind of game you want.
Sure,
but that's highly impractical.
Right. I've never been there.
Exactly. And we've been doing this for how long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a lot of people at many conventions.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. That's that. So on a scale of 1 to 10.
Yep.
Peaking during combat. That's a 10 for you, right?
Yeah, it's like a 9 or 10. Yeah.
And as a GM, same?
Honestly, no. As a GM, I have so much fun. I have more fun. When I'm GMing, I have more fun, like truly more fun doing this dance of running combat while also running social encounters.
Mhm.
Specifically, oh gosh, the word is eluding me. When you're coming up with things on the fly, what is that? Not interpretive dance.
Extemporaneous?
No, like, when you're improv.
Improv.
For me, the most fun in jamming is actually from improv.
Okay.
Is forcing myself to think on the fly and come up with random shit, pulling it right out of my ass. That to me is peak DMing. Everything else is kind of just like boring to me.
Okay.
I'm actually realizing like I'm gonna run this one shot or this book written adventure to like learn book written adventures and how it's supposed to be ran. But if I could just improv every session back to back to back, and my players loved that, I'd be happy, man.
You totally can. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, you can. For sure.
We'll work on
that's its own
strategies if that's what you
episode.
want.
How to improv your way through every
totally.
scene. Yeah,
it's all about the bullet points.
Yeah.
One sentence action items.
But yeah,
okay.
so I guess to answer your question, like as a DM, probably lower, like a 5 or 6.
Okay. So exploration mode,
Right.
that emotional peak during exploration mode, scale of 1 to 10 as a GM.
As a GM, that's actually bigger. It's probably closer to an 8.
I thought it might be as a player.
Yeah. As a player,
I haven't had a lot of experience as a player having emotional peaks during encounter modes.
For me,
just because it's hard.
Probably like a 3 or 4. So it would cost a lot of spoons to do emotional peaking during exploration mode for me.
Sure.
Because
downtime, I imagine, would be a way to have that because everybody gets to have personalized activities that they do during downtime, and that's emotionally climbing. That's like,
and for
I
me,
feel good.
like doing things individually is super cringe in D&D because to me it's all about 4 or 5 people or 3 sitting on a table together.
Okay.
So for you to have your own special scene where no one else is allowed to play and they're supposed to watch you is like, oh,
I love it. I love watching other people have the spotlight to see what they do with it.
No gracias. I mean, having the spotlight is one thing, but like just like you're in a room full of 5 people and you and the DM are the only ones role playing and everyone else just has to sit there and watch. It's just like
gets to sit there and watch, has the honor of sitting there and watching.
I don't know. I just look at other people being like, what do you think?
I get you.
And this is
role play.
Role play. It's up there. It's like a 6, 7 maybe.
As a player or as a GM?
As a player.
Okay. What about as a GM? Getting your players to hit that emotional peak during role play.
Have I ever even done it? I've never done that intentionally.
Okay.
So it's hard for me to, like, we talk a lot about these ideas, but it's really hard to put them into practice.
Sure.
And I don't think I've ever intentionally put that into practice.
I don't think so either, because it starts with intent, and for there to be intent, there needs to be language. And right now we're constructing a language around these concepts and ideas.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we have been doing these things. It's just been an intuitive exercise.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been diving into this particular topic so hard, because I'm like, I don't want to just accidentally do things well. I want to, intentionally do things well so that I can show other people how to do them so I can do it better.
Yeah.
Because I want to keep running better games. So, all of that was when designing a session arc, how do you decide where to spend your most dramatic tension during combat, exploration, or roleplay? For me, roleplay is an easy 10. If I could peak 75% of my sessions as a player during roleplay, that's probably going to be my G spot, right?
Right.
During exploration, I don't fucking know. That's something I would love to experience. During combat, abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah.
25% of the time.
Got it.
2.5 or 3 out of 10 combats, peak it there. A boss fight, absolutely. A combat that has narrative implications for my character, absolutely.
But 3 or 4 other mook battles in between.
The empty combats, that's not going to emotionally peak me.
Right.
So,
but my point is, like, you need some buffer.
Oh, totally.
Between those combats.
Yeah, you power up and you power down, and that's a way of powering down. Perfect. I dig it. All right, moving on. Would you believe we're on number 3 now of 5?
I'm so proud of us.
Yeah. How would you modulate spotlight time in PF2E's initiative-driven structure
Oh my God.
to maintain player attention without overextending key moments or draining momentum? Okay. So what we're doing here is using reaction-heavy creatures to share the spotlight. That's my example.
What does that even mean?
That means during a round of initiative.
A round of combat.
We're in combat. We're in combat now. Right. And there are 4 players in combat order, and there's 2 monsters. Monster 1 will go, 4 players will go, Monster 2 will go.
Okay.
It's very clinical, everything in a box. But when reactions get introduced, we're no longer in a box. We're interacting with each other's actions and activities and tasks. And what that does, by definition, is when the monster is doing a thing and you do a reaction, it shines a spotlight on you.
Okay.
When you're doing a thing and the monster does a reaction, it shines a spotlight on you.
Okay.
Player 1 of 4. And there are 4 players that presumably have reactions, right? And every time they pop off, they get spotlighted for a moment. What do you do with that spotlight? Do you just bulldoze your way through it and move on through the round? Or do you take a moment to go, okay, let me talk about how my character fights. Let me talk about how my character reacts. Let me help the table understand a little bit more of my character through this combat moment because I've got the spotlight for this one brief moment in time. Using reaction-heavy creatures to share the spotlight is a really easy, low-hanging fruit tactic to excite players because now they're in the foreground for players who want to be.
So how does this relate to the spoon theory of spending and using your players' attention wisely?
When there is off-turn player engagement, meaning reactions,
right?
You got to pay attention, and that requires attention.
Oh, so this is like, oh, dude, I'm like, something
happened there.
You've unlocked me realizing the genius of PF2E's design philosophy because
it's really smart.
Like the more I learn about war games, like when you look at the history of wargaming, Warhammer and stuff like that, Age of Sigmar is pretty famous for this. Age of Sigmar leveled up its gameplay by leveling up its engagement. So there's a lot of stuff you do as a reaction to your opponent doing shit. If one of your guys moves too close to one of your dudes, one of their dudes moves too close to one of your dudes, you can spend a CP, like a point, a command point, to reactionary move away from them. And that creates another level of headspace.
Engagement.
Exactly.
And headspace, yeah.
So if you layer on in the context of a TTRPG, they've taken that same idea and used that to keep players engaged.
Yeah.
And that makes me think, like, I almost want to add more reactions. One of the things I tell players when I'm helping them optimize their characters is you get 3 actions in a reaction every turn, but reactions are expensive to get a hold of. They, you got
to pay for them.
The fighter gets reactionary move, but reactionary strike. But every other class gets reactions that have very specific triggers to them. And those are very narrow kind of
niche moments,
niche things. So what I generally recommend players to do is find themselves a general reaction they can do in combat or stack a bunch of niche ones on top of each other and just have a list in front of you where you have like 3 different niche reactions. Sure. So you always have something to do with your reaction. Because if you don't use your reaction by the end of your next turn, that's a wasted action.
And that kind of engagement excites you and will completely drain other people. Right. Because what you have to do when there are turns within turns, which is kind of what we're talking about, totally. Kind of a Russian doll experience, is if I have to pay attention during 3 people's turns, that's draining. It's draining at different rates for different people. For me, one of my favorite board games in the entire world, one of my top 5 favorite board games is Twilight Imperium.
Oh, really?
I will never play it again.
Oh.
Because it takes 45 fucking minutes for the turn to come back to me.
Yeah.
There's not enough engagement between turns. I hate it because I love that game so much. But I'll never play it again. And I love the idea of sitting for 12 hours at a board game with 7 other people, an 8-player experience or 6. I forget what it plays up to. But the reality is just the AP is too intense for people that I have played with over the many, many, many years since I think it was 2nd edition was the first one I played. And
my other friend Eric also really fucking, the one from Alabama that I went to college with, he also really loves that game. So maybe we should try and sit down and knock it out.
I'll give it another go. Absolutely. Yeah. It's been years since I played it. So So let's get back to this. If you are a character in a turn order and you do your move, punch him in the face and then drink a potion. That's it. I'm going to go look at my phone and wait for my name to be called again.
Right.
Some players, they need that downtime between their turns. They need to disengage.
Oh,
they can't be completely engaged. By disengaging, they're conserving their energy units so they can spend them elsewhere. Other people, like you, like me, we like the turns within turns. I enjoy watching what other people do so I can plan what I'm going to do, taking that criteria into account.
Oh, shit.
And the same, and the same, and the same. And, oh, hey, it's my turn again. And I have all of this wonderful tapestry I can look at, and now I can add to it on my turn, and then do it again, and then do it again.
I never realized there are some people that need that downtime in between to really kind of save their energy. Because for me, I'm like, give me more. Every time someone moves, that changes what I'm going to do.
It does.
And also, I'm such a fucking power gamer that I'm like looking at other people being like, what would be a really good idea is if you did this. So I'm also kind of like backseat, tacticianing, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, again, I love combat, but there are things about combat that requires a higher energy expenditure for me.
Got it.
Than others. So if I get combat the way I want it as a player, I could do 3 a night in a 5-hour session. Totally. Absolutely. I can have an entire 5-hour session of nothing but combat if it's presented a certain way, but it rarely is. So I just sort of, I found ways to kind of
deal with it.
I guess deal with it. Yeah. Yeah. I should use my words more. Maybe I'll get better combats, but not that the combats have been bad. It's just, there's a quality of the experience that is draining or empowering, depending on who's absorbing it and doing it. So here we are. We got reaction-heavy creatures to share the spotlight. We're trying to conserve our spoons, our energy expenditures. And the idea is, how do you modulate the spotlight time in this system's initiative-driven structure to maintain player attention, to keep people's attention without overextending key moments that drain the momentum of the combat? So here's our action item. GMs, design monsters with reactions that trigger off of multiple PCs. For example, attacks of opportunity. I know we don't call them that anymore. And other retributive strike analogs. This encourages off-turn player engagement so that even non-active players can be focused.
Especially the reactions from monsters that do weird shit.
Yeah.
Don't give me the AOs of monsters. Give me the if you move, I move closer to you kind of shit. That creates story moments to really reel them in.
Yeah.
And that allows you to describe them.
Yeah. And that's empowering, which means you're depleting your resources, your emotional resources at a lower rate.
Right.
That's the key. We need to get to the end of a 2-hour game after having worked a shitty 8-hour workday. And in order to do that, we have to be cognizant of our emotional expenditures. So that's that. So the goal of this entire action item here is to encourage off-player turn engagement so even non-active players can stay focused. How do we do that? That's the deal, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when it comes to combat, I can be engaged or disengaged. It just depends on where the weight is.
Absolutely.
All right. So all that makes sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect.
Moving on to number 4.
Number 4. What do we got? No whammy. Rotate the cinematic focus during your descriptions. Let's skip that one. We're going to move down to number 4. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So in what ways does thinking of attention as a spendable resource change your approach to session prep, especially in a system as robust and crunchy as Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered? The idea here that I'm flirting with, and this isn't a perfect idea, so bear with me here and help me flesh it out. Using the XP budget as an attention gauge.
Oh.
I figured this would get your attention. So when building encounters, and this is our call to action, our action item, when building encounters, treat moderate encounters as the baseline. We've talked about that before.
Yep.
That's common. Nothing original there. Severe and extreme encounters are a high attention spend. If you love combat, if you hate combat, it's a high attention spend. It just is. There's more involved. There's more math. There's more.
If you
it's
hate
harder
combat,
to hit.
it costs more spoons. If you love combat, it costs less spoons.
I don't even think it costs less because you guys, well, I'm not going to say you guys. I have seen you as a player at my table where you got really frustrated because you couldn't hit a target AC you thought you should be able to hit. And that was an expenditure of energy and emotions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was
right.
a depletion of what resources you brought to the table.
You're totally right.
And you burn out halfway through when I do shit like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm the same way in other contexts. So when we're building encounters, treating moderate encounters as the baseline, that's a baseline expectation.
Yeah, totally.
You just assume every encounter is moderate until you start learning otherwise in the middle of it. At that point, severe and extreme are high attention spends. Maybe cap at 1 severe or extreme per session. Do you really want 2 extreme combats per session?
No.
I don't.
No one does.
I mean,
that's insane.
If I know I'm walking into an extreme, I love it. If it's sprung on me out of nowhere and there's no real clues to know that I'm way out of my depth and I have the option to flee.
Right.
It's just it can get frustrating quick, and
like
that
a random
depletes
dragon
my energy
coming out of nowhere, being like, "I'm a dragon, fuck you, we can't fight."
Yeah. I mean, if I'm in a tower and I see a pair of kaiju like starting to brawl, and I just happen to be in the middle, I know that's a motherfucking extreme encounter.
Yeah.
It's there, you know. It's like I had plenty of ample warning,
Yeah.
but like you said, you know, if Superman jumps out of the shadows and punches you because they beat your initiative number and you go down in 1 hit, that's not fun.
Yeah, no. Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, I don't have any energy left to finish this session.
Oh, and I wonder why.
Yeah. So using the XP budget as an attention gauge is something that I'm going to be more deliberate about as I create Edgewatch scenarios, because I love throwing severe encounters out. The reason why is because I want my world to feel dangerous. I want my world to feel like every decision matters. Not life and death matters. You know, this isn't a zero-sum game, but just that thought.
You don't think it's because of 5e brain rot?
No, because I didn't know 5e well enough to be able to
How many 5e games did you run?
I ran a 15-level 5e game. I ran a couple of levels of Tomb of Annihilation.
And that's it, yeah.
I ran a little bit of Phandelver when I was still in California.
Oh, and then we just got.
I think that might have been it.
Okay, shit.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. All
so
right.
OG 5e is where I started, and then Ravenloft was my like big core experience, which if I could do it over again.
Yeah, but because like this is doing severe after severe after severe is a big issue in the 5e community as well, and I call it 5e brain rot because 5e is so terribly balanced for combat that it pretty much forces you to do severes only after like 6th level. But I'm realizing now that the reason why we have probably played in multiple severe encounters back to back to back is not because of 5e brain rot, and probably more because of your proclivity towards those big, juicy encounters. Like, you would rather have one encounter in a session, one combat in a session that's like really important and dense. But when you go session to session to session to session, you get one every session, and every one of them is dense.
Right.
It can kind of weigh on your players.
Who needs that Dark Souls experience, really?
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. Like it's almost like this budget system that we're talking about is important to keep in mind in the context of the single session.
Sure.
But almost you can zoom out and be like, every 10 sessions has 100 spoons to spend in some ways.
Okay.
And if you have severe after severe after severe, if you fully deplete someone to 0 spoons at the end of every session, back to back to back, it's gonna be rough, bud. It's gonna be rough.
Yeah, I kind of want 9 of my spoons to go away.
Exactly.
And to have 1 left that I can get in the car and drive my ass home.
Yeah, you don't want to be exhausted. Like sometimes an emotionally exhausting game of D&D that was fulfilling is like, oh yeah, I needed that.
Right? I need a cigarette.
Exactly, cigarette and a whiskey. But like, if that happens every single D&D game, you got to be a special kind of psychopath.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
See, the fall of the Edgewatch precinct in the beginning of the Edgewatch game, that was a bunch of severe encounters kind of all thrown together. And you guys weren't all on the same part of the map, and you all had like individual combats going on in your own areas. That is that kind of what you mean when you say just like have 100 energy units for one type of combat?
You say that as if I was there, but I wasn't.
Fuck, I keep thinking you were there. God, that was probably the best session we did in this.
I know, rub it in, Eric. Rub it in.
I wish you could have been there.
But my point is, a better example is Ravenloft, where because Ravenloft is grimdark, it really is just like the werewolves are there to kill you. The vampires are there to kill you. Right. You have to assume every fight you do is a severe encounter because everything is like every fight is life or death, session after session after session after session. It's like, bruh, can I fight some bats?
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
It's that's GM intent, I think, at that point.
Absolutely.
So like Curse of Strahd isn't just a bunch of severe encounters. Yeah. I just ran them that way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and
I didn't understand the things that I've been learning since then.
And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to the session, like the 100 spoons out of 10 sessions. You know, if you do a lot of depleting activities back to back to back on one player, you got to give them some breathing room.
Yeah,
where you give them a session or two, like me. If you throw if there's 2 sessions back to back where we only play every 2 weeks, and they're both RP heavy.
You lose a month. Yep.
That's a month of me not getting a single combat.
That's a month and a half, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm just like, bruh.
No, that's 2 months.
Can we punch something?
2 weeks leading in, 2 weeks leading out, and then the 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's harsh. So
that's what I mean about like taking this analogy and expanding it over multiple sessions.
Sure.
You can do that to a player. You can give them a session where they don't get anything that they're looking for. But later on, you got to give them a little good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So if there's 4 players at the table, who wants nothing but moderate encounters? Who wants moderate and low or trivial encounters, to get that powerful feeling, right? Roll dice and you roll a 5 and you still hit.
So I remember actually reading I think it was in game theory or like economic game theory back in college. Econ major here.
You don't say.
We did well, I know you could be tuning in for the first time, Goblin, and not know that I'm obsessed with economics.
Are you
obsessed with economics?
Do you know where you are?
We have a lot of actually the majority of viewers for our videos are new.
Really?
Yeah. Thanks, YouTube.
So what I'm hearing is people just fuck off right away when they hear our ugly voices.
That's pretty normal, though. That's pretty normal for most channels. Yeah.
Attention span.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, like my point being is that in this economic theory of value, you could have 5 people who all value different things at different amounts.
Yes.
And it could be that there are 2 or 3 people in a population of 10 who really fucking hate a specific thing. And that would lower the average opinion of something to being really low because these 2 outliers drag down, their preferences are so negative, they drag down the average happiness of the entire population.
Trolls will fuck with your ratings.
It's not even trolls. These aren't trolls. These are just people with certain proclivities. Like, if
they're coming by it honestly, they just have those.
Okay, to use an extreme example to prove a point, if I've got a D&D table full of 5 people, and one of them has been a victim of sexual violence, like having anything remotely close to sexual violence at the table is gonna fucking ruin it for them.
Yep.
And maybe the other players at the table will be like, it's kind of weird, but like whatever. But when we take an average of the happiness of that table, it just like had we avoided that topic, it would have been way higher. And that's what I mean by this preference thing. Like you might have someone at the table who's a 10 out of 10 loves combat. And if you don't give them one of those combat sessions, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm getting at here.
Sure.
Is like, because you're dealing with 3 to 5 people of varying levels of preference of 3 different variables in our XYZ axis, it's some heckin' math to figure it out.
it sounds like you're talking about cost-benefit analysis. That's
it's kind of
what it brings down
to.
to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is the goal of this entire
goblins.
thing?
Yeah, right.
Using encounter XP budgets, we're used to using them to balance encounters.
Right.
Because balance. That's our hobby horse for this particular edition.
Totally.
Using encounter XP budgets, not just for balance, but for managing attention load.
I love it.
Those two, it's a seesaw, I think. You know, it balances when having encounter math balanced and having the attention span balanced. If you can get both of those dialed in, oh my God, you've got a group for life, I would imagine. Because who wouldn't want to be there?
And what I love about this is that it ties a system that we already know and love directly to attention. So there's no ambiguity really there. The harder the fight, the more spoons you're going to be spending across the board. And some people you're going to be spending a fuck ton of spoons of. Some people are going to be spending still some significant amount of spoons, but not as many.
Yes. So let's dig in a little bit more here. Identify one attention spike per session, right? We already covered this a little bit, but here where we're using XP budget as an attention gauge, the call to action here is choose one scene in your session or mechanic that will serve as the drama spend. Here, you want some more? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Leave me some. Choose one scene or one mechanic that serves as the drama spend. For example, a tactical boss fight, a moral dilemma, or a trap build exploration scene. The goal here is to avoid prepping multiple complex scenes back to back, focusing attention where it matters most. Use the XP budget as an attention gauge as you're doing multiple encounters. Kind of, when are your players going to tune out? Spend accordingly, spend wisely, spend thriftily.
Absolutely.
So I think that might be a good place to stop. And everybody else, we got a fifth one coming in.
Let's knock out our number 5 and call it.
Let's do it. Okay.
Absolutely. This episode might run into 1:30, but that's okay. I think we've covered a lot of really good ground, and I want to get a good.
This is a good
5.
one. I think this might be the best one, so we're gonna end strong.
Oh shit! All right, hell yeah! I thought number 3 was the best so far, so this is awesome.
Good. I need to go back and find out which one that was. So I don't know what lands and what doesn't until it does. Number 5. What are your strategies for restoring spent attention after a dramatic or rules-heavy scene where a lot of energy has been sucked out of the players, right? Do you do it through humor, through world detail, through familiar NPCs, maybe a system-supported downtime? How do you replenish the energy units that have been spent? Insert a low-stakes, low-rule scene immediately after your high-stakes, high-rule scene. It's a good way to do it.
So far we've talked about this theoretical system of spoons as a zero-sum game where you can only spend them. But what you're suggesting here is that we can actually kind of restore, revivify some of those points after a big spend.
A short rest, if you will.
Yes. This reminds me in Bloodborne, one of my favorite Souls-like games.
That one's like Ravenloft, isn't it?
Actually, yeah. Victorian werewolves and witches and stuff like that. It's probably the one you'd like the most. Whenever you take damage, a portion of that damage you just took can be regained by attacking back.
Yeah.
So in this sense, if I just spent 5 spoons of one of my favorite players by dragging them through the proverbial mud in a giant combat, immediately after that combat, that BBEG is going to have a roleplay scene as they hold on to their bleeding heart, and the blood slowly drips out of their heart.
Yep.
So they're going to be dead in 3 minutes, but they get to have their back and forth monologue.
Yeah, and Assassin's Creed does this amazingly in the death scenes. When you finally assassinate a boss, they do this really cool little cut scene where the whole crowd fades away and it's just you and the guy, and they're like, "Why are you doing this? You don't know what we're about." And then exactly what you're saying, yeah.
Right. So you're suggesting that we can, if I just spent 5 points, I might be able to get 1 point back.
I know I have personally experienced that regenerative effect mid-game.
Oh, really?
I've seen it happen at conventions. I've seen it happen at table games. I've tried to encourage it in my own games. And it really depends on what turns your players on. So if I drain all of your energy units, like 7 out of 10 of them with some, RP scenes, and then we go into a combat, you might get a few of them back. Enough to be able to expend on an exploration scene or a non-combat or non-roleplay scene. So I've experienced it. I feel like it can be leveraged by clever players and GMs both. This isn't just a GM tool. This is a player tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have tricked myself into enjoying things I wouldn't normally enjoy because I have found ways to do this at the table. So yeah, here's an action item just to put the rubber on the road here. Follow intense combats, puzzles, or emotional roleplay with a short scene requiring no rolls, just description, dialogue, or choice. For example, there's a sunset over the ruins, a shared meal, or a flashback. No rolling in there. There's just casual engagement. No real stakes, no real energy draining stakes, I should say. We were talking about the world building kind of allowing us to have sort of like a soft moment where we can, regenerate essentially. So the goal really here is to give players space to emotionally and cognitively decompress because we need those decompression moments. And I have been terrible about slipping them in through many of my historic games just because I keep trying to get that intensity and never let it go. People burn out at different rates during different scenes. And being more cognizant of this and tailoring moments to specific players and players tailoring moments to the GM as well, because we all have our preferences and we all deplete at different rates. I feel like that's important. I feel like it's important enough to have a discussion around, and I've never heard this discussion.
Interesting. I mean, I've never really had it either. We've kind of introduced a theory to the goblins out there about spoon theory as it relates to player attention and stuff like that. And this idea of regenerating and getting back some of those spoons, some of that energy expended is honestly kind of hard to wrap your mind around to begin with, let alone introduce in a new way. So,
as an avid reader for most of my life until I decided to become illiterate about 10 years ago and not read a fucking book, I found it in novels. It's like, get through this chapter. I'm just gonna finish this chapter and then I'm gonna go to bed. Fuck. I really want to finish this chapter because I want to put my bookmark there. It's a clean break. I'm going to fight my way to the chapter. And then the last 2 pages make me go, what the fuck was that? I'm reading the next chapter right now.
Yeah.
I got my my energy units back. I'm trying not to overuse the term spoons because it's not my lived experience and I don't want to appropriate that.
It's I don't know. From what I understand, it's actually kind of a debunked theory anyway. So in the sense that spoons aren't zero sum, like we're describing.
Right.
Spoons can be regenerated through the day, or even more spoons can just magically appear because of your ability to push through challenges and stuff like that.
Yeah. Sarah just got recently diagnosed with EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's for 15 years, we've been struggling with this and didn't have language for it until fairly recently.
That's awesome.
She finally got the diagnosis, and it is good. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's also sort of like, it's sobering as well.
Well, diagnoses are tools to understand the world.
They are, and they also help you understand where the world ends.
Right.
Where the limits are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the rest of your life is playing within the limits. So all that is to say, when I use the term spoons, it's essentially me trying to understand my wife. Okay. It's not me trying to appropriate somebody else's experience. Yeah. I don't know why I'm sensitive to that, but it's been that way for the last 5 to 10 years.
If you think it's important to be said, it should be said.
So energy units is what I've been using, and I think they're regenerative during a session. If I have a shitty day at work and I come play Kingmaker, and we're only doing 2 hours, right, on a given night, and I just I feel like I've used all 10 of my units by hour 1.5, and I still have a half an hour, and I'm like, will these people just fucking shut up so I can drive home? But something happens in that 30 minutes where it's like, okay, I'll stay for another 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I love those moments.
Werewolf time.
I love giving them. I love receiving them. Werewolf time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was, that was a total Sin City moment.
Yeah, totally.
So that's my number 5. The idea being give your players space to emotionally and cognitively decompress.
Yeah, absolutely.
And players, give your GM space to cognitively decompress. When you know they're running low, your GM is running low on energy units, that's not the time to pepper them with questions about, well, I read this thing in this one book from this one place, so this is canon, right? Yeah. Okay, that's canon. It's a thing. GMs have finite resources, players have finite resources, and being able to exercise our empathy muscle and figuring out where those boundaries are will help elevate your motherfucking game to the stratosphere if you can start dialing that stuff in. And you'll never leave your group ever again.
And I think that like a lot of DMing is managing player engagement. That's a lot of what we've talked about today is managing your players' attention.
Yeah.
Something that we didn't talk about very much is the reciprocal relationship where players kind of collectively need to help manage their DM's spoons and attention and ability to deliver this awesome experience we're all trying to get through.
Yeah.
I know that you specifically like to do these big grandiose combats with interesting moving parts, and you've done a really good job in the past to know yourself and know that that is draining all of that organizational weight. And you've done a really good job actually of handing that off to the players. I remember in the fight that we talked about earlier in the episode with the big fake fight with
big old demons coming out of the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. You handed us little cards, you explained the subsystem, and you kind of let us run parts of that whole experience. It's important for players to take the reins and be like, hey, DM, is there anything I could do for you to make this a little smoother? You know, do you want me to just bring this off? A good example is just like, do you want to do this offline? Like, is this too much for you? Let's just do it later.
You know where I learned this? Where it really like my Einstein moment, my aha moment, my bolt of lightning struck my brain. It was Jacques in one of the one-off games, and he ran a game where he started the session, and then at the end of the first scene, he said, "Tag, you're it. You're the GM. Where do we go from here?" And we basically passed the baton around the table, scene for scene for scene for scene. And it was a wonderfully fucked up story that ended up in a dragon giving live birth with legs spread.
That's wild.
It was fucking crazy. But it was essentially the core idea of a GM leaning on the players.
Right.
And then, sharing the burden. Not like in a negative way, but sharing the burden in a way where everybody got to help shoulder the load so that together we could carry more by the end of that 5-hour session. Thank you, Jacques, for that. That was one of the more important GM formative moments in my GMing career, as it is, and that's helped me shape in my brain language for this specific topic we're talking about tonight.
Right.
So energy expenditure, different rates, different people, different tasks, different parts of the game system. It's a big fucking complicated mess because it's a big fucking complicated system played by big fucking complicated people with big fucking complicated lives.
Absolutely.
Right? And we've got batteries with a shelf life.
And I hope that this conversation has been a introduction to this idea. Obviously, we talked about 5 things that we think, 5 frameworks, almost independent strategies for a framework that we kind of explained that'll help you goblins navigate DMing at home and abroad. But there's more to this story. There's more to this pie.
Yep.
There's more slices you got to eat. We're going to put 5 other slices down in the Discord. Go check those out.
Everything's food to you.
Yeah. Well, I'm a food motivated man. You know what I mean? My Puerto Rican wife didn't get to my heart. She got to my heart one way, and that's through my mouth.
One of your organs. So didgeridoo it.
Absolutely. Check the didgeridoo for the Discord link. That'll bring you to the post. We'll talk a lot more about this in the Discord, I promise.
I would love to, because I need people to not only give feedback, but to talk about these things so I can listen.
And talking about them, bouncing these ideas back and forth off people is how we refine them. this idea, this is how you really get down to the good stuff,
Mhm.
is through discussion. So that's why we encourage people so much to come to the Discord and talk about it.
It's a community, yo.
Absolutely. Anything else, Eric?
No, just again, to circle back, we talked about 5 of them. There are 10 here. If you want the other 5, come to the Discord.
Yeah. In the didgeridoo.
Yep. Didgeridoo. I want a tattoo that says didgeridoo. Didgeridoo.
Check out the didgeridoo in the check out the we gotta get matching tattoos about the didgeridoo.
Didgeridust.
The didgeridoo and the didgeridoo.
Yep.
Anyway, goblins, thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Didgeridoo.
My name's Robert. This has been Goblin Salvage Rites, and as always,
Keep it weird.
keep it weird.